your store has to be a story. And that story has to be different from that place and that place and that place. So what is your story?
I'm Jessica, and this is Hands On, a podcast where I sit down with creatives, artisans, and entrepreneurs to talk about their craft and their story on how they got to where they are now. Episode 1.
Hi, my name is Susan, and I'm the owner of Wilder. There's this amazing woman. I have to find her. She's a filmmaker, but she's such an inspiration. And she talks about creativity in one episode. And she said, there's documents on the Holocaust. And in the concentration camps, they found like people's artwork, like on toilet paper, on random things. And she was talking about how that was like kind of a protest in a way, that they never gave up on their creativity, whether it was writing poems or making drawings, because then she said it's their way of protesting. Like, you can take everything away from me. You can kill me at the end, but you'll never get rid of my creativity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was so powerful to me. And that's like, it's really true, because when things are going fine, you don't think about things other than what's in front of you. There's too much going on. You're part of society. You go to work every day, 9 to 5, you go home, cook a meal, go to sleep, repeat. You keep doing that kind of thing. But when all of that disappears, I feel like if you can find it within you, and if you're a creative person, that's what starts flourishing, because all the rules aren't applying anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that happened during COVID. I think creativity, regardless of it being noticed or not, like, you had to live in a different way than we weren't used to. We had a lot more time in our hands, and people started getting creative,
Yeah.
I think that's going to happen now, because we're going through a hard time in so many different levels. I throw writing events here every once in a while, and the ones who actually start, majority of them are in their 20s. And they all had one thing in common when we went around. My neighbor, Angela, she's actually a therapist, and she does amazing writing courses where she reads a passage from a writer. And then based on what she just read, you just write what you want to write. It's been my favorite events, and I didn't think that was going to happen when I actually started the events. But there's one person, and he read his story, and I just started crying really hard, because he was Asian, and I saw a lot of what he was saying is something within the Asian community. I think it's generational, but it's like the way how we handle the world and our position. Sometimes we take the back seat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I just started crying, because I saw how that's been happening for so long in Asian cultures, especially with women. But here's a man, young man, and that really got to me. So it's become like it's one of my favorite events, because you really learn about, especially the younger ones, because they're the ones who are showing up right now. You hear what's going on inside them, But at the end of that first writing event, they all said the exact same thing when we went around the room, of why they wanted to take this course, or what they're feeling right now about what's happening in society. And all of them had this really deep sense of loneliness and not being able to connect with other people. And I think that's what the phone did too. It is a community. I don't want to say it's a false community, but the phone brings you form your own community in that. Like, to Instagram, you follow certain people, you don't follow others. And but I think human to human contact is not as common as before. Retail stores serve a function of buying and selling, right? That's another thing that happened with the internet, and with things happening online, and people living on their phone and computer systems. Or people stopped going into brick and mortar businesses and started just buying from Amazon, buying from here. And I have to admit, I do that too, because I just don't have time. I have too much on my plate, and they make it really easy,
Yeah.
Um, But my shop is just like any other business. Like we have our good days, we have our bad days, we have our great months, we have our really bad months. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Right now, I think it's inconsistent. I think more so than before COVID. I think my business during COVID was more consistent than it is now. But I don't think that people are coming into your brick and mortar just to buy product. They don't have to. So you have to have a really great story. And I have people visiting me all the time. It's like they want the sense of community and belonging. I think belonging, I tell myself that every morning. Like, don't forget, people want to belong to something. So we throw events here. My door's always open to anybody who wants to just come in and hang out. So that's really what having a retail store it's about right now. Or maybe not all of retail, but for me, that's what my shop has become. And yeah, when I have like bad days, I have like my customer friends, I call them, they'll come in and just support me. So it's really nice, to know that I can just be like, I'm having a bad day. Can you come help? And they'll, sure. And they'll come and help me, because I think I offer something more than just product, They know that this is kind of like a home that they can come to and just hang out. Or if things don't go, I get people coming in on bad days and then tell me about their bad days, and people come in on their good days and tell me about their good days. So it feels there's a sense of home here, which is always what I wanted.
Yeah. No, I mean, I personally definitely feel that. Like just walking through the store and like how you have it set up, it just feels like so warm and inviting. And then even just how we connected too, like you're so gracious with your time and how we met, which like I've been following your store and then what got me was like the posts of your dad. So like, which I do like want to talk more about, and they're reading that writing. I didn't know you were Korean, and like that kind of like stuck out. And just like, the things you talked about was so familiar, and then made me like reflect on my childhood and my family and like their story and, all of that. And so, yeah, definitely like I feel that coming from you and I agree. I think it's important. Like through COVID especially, we lost that like interaction, that in-person like support, I think also for each other. But after all this time, I feel like people definitely feel the impact of that, of like helping each other and just being there for one another, even if you know them or not, and like being kind and how far that can go and all of that. So like I guess like kind of bring it to the beginning of like where you grew up and like could you talk about just like your relationship with LA and also just like your career and kind of how you got to creating Wilder and the store?
I was born in LA in 1972. And LA's not, it's very different the way LA was compared to now. LA was pretty empty. But with that being said, it's also a great place to start something, right? There was so much opportunity here, and I think that's, I come from immigrant parents who most immigrants come here for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Initially, when I was a young girl, I was going to become a doctor. Then I switched it to lawyer because I loved reading and writing. And then in my 20s, I went through a kind of a traumatic period. And I went through a life-changing experience. And I started making clothes. I was living in San Francisco. I started making clothes. And I took them around to shops and sold them,
That's awesome.
And then I decided I don't want to be a lawyer. That was to make my parents happy. And I think a lot of Nisei generation kids like me, and I think you're Nisei, you were first born here, right? there is this like expectation. I think people think it's funny owning my own business. People think that's like you reached a pinnacle of some sort, having your own business.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but I come from immigrant parents. They don't see it that way.
Yeah.
Immigrants see that's so dangerous. They didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
They opened a business because they had to have an income.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have a degree from the U.S. They couldn't become doctors. They couldn't be. So, it depends on whose perspective you're listening to or talking to, that it's not all, it's a very American way of thinking that this is the epitome of your life's career, I guess, to have your own business.
Yeah.
But if you ask somebody like my parents' generation, they're like, wait, you had to open up your own business.
Yeah.
It's a different thing. But this shop actually, I've been a designer for now a long time, 30 years or so. So I worked for great brands. I worked for small brands. I got lucky and worked for a man who's pretty famous in my industry. His name's Adriana Goldschmidt. He started Diesel back in the day.
Was denim like always kind of the goal, or you just?
No. So my first job, it was with a man named Morty Forshpan. He's Canadian. He's owned a brand called Bum Equipment back in the 80s, 90s. BUM. It was really famous.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember seeing that? So he retired, sold it, and he started buying licenses from Europe. And then Adriano came from Italy, moved to the U.S., and approached my boss and said, I want to start a denim brand based in L.A. Would you back me? Morty said no. So Morty and Adriano went to go meet Mr. Koo, and Morty introduced Adriano to Mr. Koo. Mr. Koo bought Big Star Jeans from Morty, and then also took on Adriano. And then Adriano asked me, I met Adriano through Morty, and then he asked me if I would be his assistant. That's how I got started after a year of doing knits. At that point, and I still think to this day, like fashion schools, they don't have a denim centric program. Like you had to be an apprentice.
Oh, wow.
In order to learn anything about it. So I got lucky. I was a lucky person. I got to work with the king of denim. So he taught me everything I knew about denim, every fiber, every dye, to the point that my first couple years, like all I did was the technical work. And then I said, hey, I'm a designer, like use my creative side. Like, he was such a good trainer that it wasn't until after like 4 years I left and I went to a brand called Chip and Pepper, I realized how much I actually learned. I've had a great career. I still do. And how the store started happening was I quit my job and wanted to relax a little bit, but I also started helping my parents more often at the nursery. And then over the course of my career, I accumulated so much vintage from around the world and a lot of vintage denim. I had a room full of it.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really good at making mood boards because that was my job at Abercrombie, was to make, they had these beautiful catalogs. We had to create those on boards, and they would give them the guide into building those catalogs. They're quite famous for their quarterly catalog.
Yeah.
So my parents had a tiny trailer-sized building at their nursery. I said, Dad, can I have that building? He's like, what are you going to do with this? I said, well, I quit my job. I don't want to drink at night. So if you give me that building, I'll have something to do. You can take the building. I gutted it out. I had nothing envisioned but a mood board. I had all this vintage. I painted the walls. I was really into interiors too, personally. I did everything. I didn't have a job, so I had to make everything financially as inexpensive as possible.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, creativity comes out of like times like this, and you're like, okay. So I just got into creative mode and I built this really beautiful mood board out of this trailer-sized building. It was tiny, and people come in here and say this place is really beautiful, but this one was like 10 times more beautiful. It was beautiful. So while I'm working on it, I didn't realize that my parents were really popular. Like so popular. I was in Tokyo for work, and I got tapped in the hotel in the elevator. I got tapped by somebody. I turned around. They're like, "Do your parents own a nursery in LA?" I go, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, we shop there. We seen you there." So they're really popular, and they were really popular around creatives. So they started walking into the nursery and started watching me work, and then they would come by. And then I started putting product up, and people started taking photos. This is when Instagram first started, and they started taking photos of it. And then they started asking me if they could buy stuff. And I said, well, sure. And then I would be in the corner trying to figure out how much it's worth on eBay or whatever. And then they started taking photos, and then people would come in. I had the door closed too. It wasn't a shop. It was just a project. I just wanted something to do, and I was really good at mood board. And then people started seeing it on Instagram, and they coined it the secret shop. There was no name. And so people would come in like, can we get into your secret shop? And I was like, okay. So I take it, and then people started buying. And then I got a phone call, and it was a woman who shopped at my parents' nursery, saw me working on something, and said she worked for J Brand that got bought by Uniqlo. She goes, I sent photos to my boss in Japan. They were wondering if you would want to be a part of a documentary we're working on denim in LA, and they would like to feature a part of it on your shop. If you want to, they'll fly their marketing team over. I said, okay. And then I was like, I got to figure out a name. So Wilder came up because I was working in this beautiful environment. My parents had a beautiful outdoor nursery, and wildering means, people say wilder because that's, I think in the American dictionary, that's more common than wilder. Wildering means like getting lost in the forest and foraging. Like that's what it meant. And I saw that on a road trip up north somewhere, and I wrote it down in my notebook for some reason. So I said, I'm going to call it wilder because we're in this nursery. It's like foraging. And also with vintage, it's like foraging.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was really into sustainability at that time. In the denim world, we haven't been in the past good about being sustainable. I worked at a mill, and the innovation that's happening right now in denim is amazing. But because there's the fabric and there's also the washes were toxic. In the beginning, they were working by themselves. And I think right now they're figuring out we got to work with the wash team or the wash houses to make the right fabric that they can wash more sustainably. It's like you have to connect the dots to make it really sustainable. And I think we're at that point now, which is great. So Wilder, the vintage was supposed to speak about how to rethink fashion where it's not so disposable. And I'm also a designer. So I do every once in a while, I mean, if I can afford it in LA, I make products sustainably. Like we have some chore pants that we made out of dead stock fabric, and then we mineral dyed them. So no chemicals were used.
Oh, wow.
And we make them in small batches. I also make everything unisex so that you're not making one set for men, one set for women, just building styles that will work for both. I feel like that's my story. That's the story it started with. There's so much waste, especially clothing, and the manipulation that a lot of these big brands, some of which I've worked for, It used to be when I first started in this industry, it used to be that product was the most important thing, building a beautiful product. That's what I was taught. And over the course of time, it became product is less important and marketing is more important. How to sell it,
Yeah.
but so it's the manipulation. And you see it all the time, on Instagram. If you like something, it keeps popping up on your Instagram.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to focus on how to build an experience. And I knew going into it, Instagram just started, but I knew just from working in the fashion industry that things were pivoting over the internet, so how do you get people walking in your store, right? Anyway, I had to shut that operation down, which became organically on its own a store. It wasn't from me trying to make a store. It was like everyone called it a store. So I said, okay, it's a store,
Yeah.
So my dad got sick, unfortunately. I shut it down. He closed up his shop eventually, and I closed my shop down. And then, he was battling cancer, so I focused on him. I went actually back to work at that time for a local. It's not a local. It was a Chinese mill, but in their offices in LA, just And then I was doing it by appointment from my house, and I had my designers, my friends, who moved from Abercrombie onto like Wrangler and Lee jeans and other J brand and Uniqlo. They would make an appointment. I built my garage into like a little creative space, and they would buy, but it was only by appointment. And then COVID hit, so I was still grieving pretty heavily my dad, and then during COVID, I was still working. I worked remotely a lot, but I was still working for the mill. What happened was my friend contacted me and said, there's a space on Sunset. The guy, he was actually quite successful. He had a graphic t-shirt business. He was selling so much online during COVID. He didn't need the brick and mortar anymore, so he wanted to get out of the lease. I came and looked at it, and it was really funky when I first got it. We basically tore down a wall where that white beam is. This was the storefront, and the back was his warehouse. But anyway, before even that, I saw the space, and pre-COVID, I was looking for spaces because my dad got sick and I closed up, and I was going down Sunset in the Silver Lake area. Those spaces were going anywhere between $15,000 a month to $35,000.
What?
And I was like, so that's why a lot of small businesses shut down.
Dang.
Yeah, it was insane. So this space popped open during COVID, though. So, it's a crazy time. It's crazy when you don't have control over the future.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's also such a learning lesson. You can look at it negatively, but it's also there's such a positive space in that because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So you have to live for the moment, or you have to think the best. You have a choice. You think the worst or you think the best. Are you going to be negative about it? You're going to be positive about it. I wrote pros, cons, do a line. Pro, cheap rent. Con, COVID. So I had some money saved, and I just said, you just have to survive COVID. And I think I can do that. And it'll give me time to really figure out what the store is going to look like. But who knew when COVID was going to end, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I tore down the wall, opened it up, poured down new concrete on the floor. And then I said, let me test the customer bases. So this is about a year after COVID started. I put 4 racks outside. And I said, let's see if customers come by. It was gone in a day. So a year after COVID is very different than the year of COVID. Year after COVID, everyone was so sick of staying at home. They felt lonely. They wanted things to do. They wanted to go to a brick and mortar.
Yeah.
So I got lucky with my timing and I was busy. And COVID was actually, for me, my experience, it was actually financially very good.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. And it was just by chance. I didn't realize that the timing was what was crucial about it. You know what everyone wants now? It's not really product, it's a sense of community.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people want right now.
Yeah.
You
There's
know?
so much like noise, like with, I mean, like everything too, like e-commerce really boomed through COVID.
Yeah.
And like it's so recent, and now it's, you know, it's like a easy way, even for like bigger companies, especially because then they're like, oh, we don't have to pay for like the retail space and stuff. They're saving on that. But it's exhausting, like just going through social media and you're getting like ad after ad of like buy, 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 or like you have to, you know, trends and like you're saying, fast fashion, like all these things rotate. But yeah, like again, like that feeling of just slowing down and then wearing what you want to wear, like not really like going after trends too, which is like my personal thing with vintage clothing. It's like, it's less about, oh, what's popular right now, but like, what do I just like feel drawn to? And
Yeah.
so.
And it's probably better made products, you know, the vintage clothing.
Yeah.
And also, why do we have to keep buying new stuff? Like, honestly, it's disgusting. Like, I walk, just because I've worked in the fashion field, you see these landfills. It's really, there was a time where people took the time to get their bodies measured and got clothing made by hand, you know? Like, we've lost our relationship to clothing and made it so not personal, you know what I mean? And clothing is the way you express yourself. It's like any other art form. And instead of making it an expression of ourselves, we have bought into this idea that we have to look like that person and look like that person.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then you lose your relationship to clothing, which should be more special than you treat it. It's going on your body too. So if you respect yourself, you have to respect everything on it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree.
I've always been that person when it comes to shopping. It's like I buy things with the intention of keeping it forever. I do not like things that I know I'm not going to want tomorrow. So I like a lot of, like, I think I've had this for 25 years.
Oh, nice.
I've had these for 20 years, Capital from Japan. I've always been that mindset. So, and I appreciate, I think my customers, where I get lucky is they're very connected to things that are going on in the world. They're connected with they know like we screwed up the climate. So I think also, especially the younger ones that shop with me in their 20s, they're very in tune with vintage and they are very, they understand like how to express themselves with vintage, you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's really fun. It's really fun to be able to work with somebody and build that connection with them. Like, oh, I know what's, you know, there's people who come in, I'm like, I got something for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that, like, I think we lost the connection of like having people connect with the product.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's like, I mean, I talk about that with just my clients a lot of, you know, like, because I'm more focused on the branding side and just telling that story. And because again, like with like Amazon or just how easy it is to find like a product that's selling well or something, be like, okay, let me just make as much money as I can selling this and then like leave, kind of a thing. You know, I've worked with people who have found that, but they're just not personally also connected maybe to that product, and then they're like struggling to find the longevity of it. But it's like, you know, like I feel like there's a point where customers too, like again,
we're in this time where we want that connection more so than just what is this I'm buying, or like that instant gratification. And it's really like building that brand community and like connecting with your customer. Like we're just not trying to make money off you, but we want to like have this relationship with you, like an ongoing one, and like listen to them and like just really like build that experience. And I think people shopping are also seeing, what brands are doing that or actually care versus like who's just trying to make money off of you kind of a thing. And
First of all, in my, maybe I'm wrong, but in my mantra, I guess, if you're designing something to just make money, it's not a good design.
yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And maybe I'm wrong, but because maybe it is about money, but if you're having a hard time finding longevity in it, it's because you don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
That you started, the foundation was built really wrong, you know?
Yeah.
If my shop, there are days that, I mean, it's had great moments and it's had really hard moments, but the longevity is going to be there because I'm going to make sure it stays. It's not about the money. Because if it was about the money, I'm like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's some.
It's brick and mortar. It's about, to be honest, like I'm more intrigued by it there's two aspects. I tell myself belonging, like where does this belong? Who belongs here? And then becoming. What is it going to become next year? So becoming and belonging are really important to me, and that's outside of. It's not finance at all. It's about. I'm at this point. I started during COVID. Crazy, right? So you have to have a great story if you're going to start at a time like that. And at any time, I tell people, I'm like, your product is supposed to tell a story. And if it doesn't tell a story, in my book, it's weak. Your store has to be a story. And that story has to be different from that place and that place and that place. So what is your story?
Yeah. I know you brought, like, we've talked a lot about like community and that being a big part of Wilder. Does that, so like I do want to talk more about your family and just like your dad's kind of role in building Koreatown and all that. Do you think like maybe that comes from that experience too, like seeing your dad like build that, or just the importance of that? Like,
it's funny because I grew up not realizing the importance of it. When you're a little girl growing up in that atmosphere and not knowing what you know in adulthood, it was just like not a big deal. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Because it's not until you're an adult making your own decisions and building your own life that you realize how hard certain things are. I didn't realize that when I was younger, but I realized that, especially like starting Wilder, like moments of being scared, like because I was fed that Kool-Aid of like you have to get a full-time job, get that paycheck. That was, what I was fed, and I had that security, right? But every job ends, and no one taught me that. Like every job comes to an end, or you can work your way up as far as possible, but it's going to end one day.
yeah.
You don't get that security blanket anymore, right? I am my father's daughter. Like, I'm very much like him, but I started thinking a lot about him when I started building my own life, truly building. I didn't have to wake up and go to a job. So I'm like, what am I going to focus on now? What do I want? It's the first time. It's very exciting, but also on the flip side, it's also very overwhelming in a way. Like, I can do whatever I want now. No one's telling me what to do anymore.
Yeah.
And then I think about my dad, and I didn't know what a big deal what he did was until I was older. I didn't understand that. He was just dad, you know? But he did an extraordinary thing. And I think I realized that, I think it was the Rodney King riots. I was actually in college when that happened. I wasn't even here. And this feeling came up like, that's dad's home.
Yeah.
You know? And my dad never talks about it with me. He never talked about the whole, I was away, I had no information. So when I get scared of things with my shop, I'm like, Dad built Koreatown. You're just building a shop, you know? So I look at it from that. That's his guidance to me now that he's not here, is that I look at what he's accomplished in his life and I'm like, come on, you can do this. As a dad, he was amazing. He knew how to work with me where he wasn't much of a talker with me, except for he's gotten emotional like maybe twice in my life. We were very connected and close, but he knew how to support me, but not push me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny because I found a passage in the book that in the letter he wrote me, when I started writing about my dad, he wrote how he was really proud of me. And if I ever wanted to start my own business, he's like, let me know, I'll help you because you're very talented. He was supportive in different ways. Like one day, I don't have a lot of Korean friends. When I started working in the fashion industry, I made a few. And a good friend of mine, Sumi, came over to my parents' house with me for dinner. So we're sitting around the dinner table. There were like, Sumi and Susan were my Korean friends. And it was my mom, my dad, and I. And then Sumi asked in Korean, and I understand Korean, so I'm eating. She's like, Mr. Lee, do you want Susan to marry a Korean guy? Or do you want her to marry a non-Korean guy? And I dropped my utensils and I literally ran out of the dining room. And I was like, why would she ask that while I'm sitting here? I've never had that conversation with my dad, right? So I was like, but curious as to how he was going to answer it. So I'm behind the wall, like,
You're just like,
listening. And so this was in our 20s, late 20s. So all of my life, I just never got myself in a position where I would have to introduce a boyfriend to my dad because I didn't know where he stood on this. And his response was, and for some of you, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but he said, I don't want her to marry a Korean guy. And I was surprised by that because I thought he was a little more conservative than that. He's like, if you know Susan, she's not to be controlled. And I feel that a Korean man might try to control her. And she won't be happy in a marriage. In his point of view, everything I thought about my dad up until that, I always thought he wanted me to marry a Korean man, right? And surprisingly enough, he didn't have that expectation at all. Or, you know, when I was younger for, high school graduations, a lot of girls, I didn't have the double eyelids. So my mom wanted to gift it to me for a graduation because that's what they do. So right after high school, going to college, they'll gift you plastic surgery in Korea. So my mom was talking to my dad about it. Like, we can do her eyes. And he got so angry about it.
really?
And he said, she's Korean. No matter what you do, she will always be Korean. So he's been really supportive in that way. Like, and I was too young to understand what that argument was really about, because I was like, oh, I want to be pretty. But he was basically, I think my dad really understood the big picture always of like understanding what was put on us. So you had to have a big, beautiful double eyelid eyes to be pretty.
Yeah.
He understood that was like something that actually was a weight on our shoulder.
Yeah.
The standards were American.
Yeah.
And he was very, very clear on where he stood within those standards, but he also knew how to navigate it. to use it for his benefit. And I think that's why he was so successful in Koreatown, was he understood how to navigate through having the politicians on your side, the local mayor, the local governor, but still he wanted to build a place called Korean Village, and he was very definite on what he like, making it separate. Do you know what I mean? And making a home for Korean immigrants to come to and feel welcome. And he's always had to play that role, like between the two worlds. You know, I so too, and I'm sure you have to play that role. We were taught that at such a young, formative time for us that we're not realizing how much of that, I think, that we actually play this game of acceptance but separate, how to fit into this world, how to fit into that world. We're constantly having to play that. And then owning a shop, it's really one of the beautiful things is you see even younger girls, Korean girls, and I talk to them, they live in quite a different world, or younger women in general. I think, you know, for you and I, you're quite younger than me, but I know you didn't have to just try to fit in as a minority, but also you're a minority woman.
Yeah.
That's so difficult. And there's so many things that I watch your generation younger, like when they come in, it's so different. Like, and it's really beautiful to see that they are so proud of who they are. They don't try to conform to what people are telling you to conform into.
Yeah.
They're very outspoken. I had to teach myself to become more outspoken.
Yeah, same. Because I know too, just with like culturally Asian cultures, and then from experience like Korean cultures, like through hardships too, like whether that's, you know, specifically racism, at least like, you know, my parents instilled it in me, kind of a thing where it's like all that negativity, it's like noise, and they're just like, just focus on your thing. Like that's where I think the whole backseat thing comes in play.
Yeah.
Of like, where, you know, like they're kind of more like, it's gonna be there, just focus on you, and kind of like don't like kind of, you know, I guess fight fire with fire, like that whole thing. And so, but I feel like also I think the general maybe stereotype of Asians like just being submissive or like, you know, like not vocal about that stuff, like backfires in ways. But like culturally it was more of just like, you know, like focus on your own path or whatever. But I do think like I saw it too, yeah, with younger people. And I think through the whole COVID thing that was happening like with the Asian community, a lot was targeted toward like elderly Asians. So I think the younger generations are feeling just frustrated because it's like those are our parents, our grandparents, and we need to like fight for them. And so I think that was cool, like just that shift in that whole thing of standing up for our culture and being more proud and vocal about it. My experience was weird because I am biracial, and so it was like not feeling like I fit in either side growing up, and then like realizing I'm biracial. Like I never knew like I was like Asian really like growing up, even though like, because in your home it's just that's normal for you, like you do things that are like traditional or cultural, and then you go out and then, you know, like it's like, oh, you guys don't do this, or, and then you start learning, oh, I'm different from everyone. But kind of like feeling that with both sides, it was like a struggle for me, like understanding who I was. But now I'm at this point where it's like, no, I'm like super proud of who I am. And I agree, like seeing the younger people just be more proud and above who they are. And
the reason why I started writing about my dad, it's something that I don't know if it's grief. I don't speak about it very much. Even my friends who heard, you know, he was friends with a lot of news people. And when NPR announced his death on the radio, I got phone calls. They're like, why didn't you tell me who your dad was? I was like, because he was just my dad, and I think it was the wildfires. So first it was Rodney King. The wildfires was the second time where I'm like, that's what dad built. What if it hits Koreatown, the fires? And then I wrote something about LA for KCRW, the NPR, and they reached out and said, would you mind, we would like to rotate it on the radio. And it was a thing about my dad. I wrote about my dad in K-Town, and because I started thinking, what he did, his legacy, what if it gets burned down? And then it made me really, really upset, So I started writing it. A friend of mine actually heard the passage that I wrote on KCRW. And he's like, why aren't you talking about your father? Like, I had no idea. He said, you have this huge legacy. You don't even use it. Like, your dad would want you to tell his story. And so it's like, I don't know. I think it was a grieving thing, and it's still a grieving thing. But I started writing about it. And what's so interesting to me, it's almost serendipitous, that I started writing about where my dad came from and the immigrant experience. I mean, so my dad never talked about a few things. He didn't talk about the war. He was he was probably really young. He was born, but he was born into Korea while it was occupied by Japan. And he never talks about it. He never talked about Rodney King. He never talked about Tiananmen Square. He was actually in China, and he had to figure out how to get out of that.
Oh.
Where people are just randomly being shot everywhere. Yeah,
This is in China?
in China, it was like a bloody massacre.
Oh, man.
So I remember I was home, and my mom picked up the phone, and she started bawling and screaming because he was stuck there and didn't know how to get out. He never talks about it.
Oh.
And then, so with my dad, it's like a pattern. If it hurts too much, he cannot orally talk about it, And I think it's really interesting. I started writing, and one of the first, it's not the first, but maybe the second, I was talking about the time he was born. And I had to look up certain information because I didn't get it from my dad, right? So I was like, oh, he was born in this year, and then he was born in war. Like, war happened, Japanese occupied Korea, and then my dad left because when you're in that situation, you have to leave.
Yeah.
It's survival, right? So the serendipity of my writing about him and how he came here as an immigrant from Europe, he didn't have money. He lied to get a job. He started making money. He bought a building where the market was at that time $8,500, which sounds so little to us, but I'm sure a lot at that time.
Yeah.
But what's happening now in the world with politics, it's starting to happen. I feel like maybe I'm being very negative and I want to be optimistic about it. It's like we're starting to see some things that I thought I would never see in my life, like signs of war, protests, all of that is starting to happen here. And it's kind of aligning with my stories of what my dad experienced. And I think when I posted my first few posts, I was really nervous. I was posting it on the Wilder Instagram. I'm like, I don't know. People might hate this. I might lose people on this, maybe customers might not like this because it's so personal to me. And it was the opposite. It grew. It's like people started coming in, thanking me for saying stories. And all these younger Koreans started thanking me, wanting to buy my dad's book. I'm like, I don't even think it's out published anymore, I think that there's an awareness now that we're pretty spoiled in America.
Yeah.
So we don't know what's hitting us right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
We grew up having we're so blessed that we don't understand that other people had to fight for this. other people fled their country to get the freedom that we get, you know? And now it's starting to happen here. We're slowly starting to see freedom taken away from us.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that I think that it's really resonating with people right now, quite by accident, because now we're experiencing some of the things that I'm writing about. And I think it's also hope, you know? That like here's an immigrant who had no money. And it was a different time in America, yes, but like he did something amazing, you know? And then for me, it's like if I ever have like a bad day or like, oh, I don't know, I'm a little nervous and, you know, I also want to hide sometimes from taking chances, you know? I think about him and I'm like, you can do it, you know? So that's really wonderful. But I think everybody wants to get a sense of what the old LA looked like or what it was emotionally, because I think we're losing that. I think that things are flipping, stores open, close, and, you know, the takeover of technology so you don't have to go outside and experience walking around. But I think for me, you know what I do, like when I walk around certain areas, I always like, because it's a lesson that I think I'm learning from writing about my dad, like Koreatown is a little painful for me to go to. I think about him. I think about, he lost a lot during that time. He did this great thing, but he also, I think, made bad judgments. My dad was quite successful and then he lost everything. And in a way, it was really painful, I know, for him, because I think that was masculinity back then, or he was doing something, worked his way up in the Korean community. He got to experience like being reborn again, like having to let all of that go. And he retired running a nursery, you know what I mean? So, but that person, if you have a little bit of faith and work really hard, you can make things happen, you know?
Yeah.
They were dealing with like the 1960s. Like people were not open-minded back then.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that it doesn't matter what color you are or what gender. Right now, we're at a point where most of us are having a really hard time and the government is not really listening to us. You know, they're backing corporations. They're not backing real people with, you know, doing something real. So you have to make that opportunity happen and, you know, realize like when I go to Koreatown now, like it is painful, but I also see all of this, like how much it grew and all these successful businesses that are happening that are Korean. And then I want people, why I'm writing is I want people to remember in all those places, there's these echoes that you have to listen for because people built this. It didn't just happen.
Yeah.
Like somebody actually, there were a group of people who sat down, wanted this to happen, planned it out, grew from one block and now exploded. But there's an echo there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not visually, but if you listen, you can see the early people who moved here, how hard they worked and made an area for us, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really beautiful.
I love that. Is there anything like with Wilder that you're doing that you want to share?
Right now, I have 3 pairs of jeans that I'm trying to make a small production run. I had dinner the other night with my denim design world friends. And I asked them, I said, you know what? I have to say something, and maybe this is the right platform. Why is it so hard? They make it so hard for small people to make things. You know, I said, I'm getting charged $150 to make jeans if it's under 50 pieces. You know, at this point, I think mills, I was with Cone Mills, actually, a pretty big mill. I was like, you should be giving fabric away, you know, like we should all be helping each other to make things locally. You know, and I said, but I know I don't have corporate money. I can't buy 5,000 yards, you know. I have to start it small, but we make it so difficult right now. So I'm trying to work through that. And that's my next step is building a denim brand, maybe some knits, and incorporating into this. So it was always the plan. So I wanted to start in the vintage. That will always be here because that's the most sustainable you can be, right? Not make anything, but just repurpose what we own. And then I'm a designer, so I also go through waves of designing crazy, and then I get really burnt out. So I think this was my burnout stage, and then I'm like, okay, I want to start doing that again. Becoming, like, what is my store gonna become? Maybe I'm thinking, maybe open up another one because I'm neurotic.
That's exciting though. That's so cool. We'll definitely like keep our eye out for all that stuff. And
Thank you.
yeah, I was so excited. Thanks for talking. This was
Thank you.
I always love talking with you. Of course.
Thank
Yeah.
you.